I want to be super clear and super careful in this next story. There are creators and pundits and influencers who have been talking about civil war as an imminent threat in the United States for years, and they do it irresponsibly. And it's the one hammer they have, so they go, that's a nail and that's a nail, civil war here, civil war there. I have never brought up civil war as a real possibility, and I'm going to bring it up today only in the most careful and serious way with a caveat. And the caveat is, if Donald Trump's deputy policy guy, Stephen Miller, gets his way with his deportation plan, it is plausible that we will have something that we would have to call sort of a civil war. Now, my hope is he doesn't get his way. I am not saying civil war is imminent, like Tim Pool has been saying for 5 years. I am saying that what Stephen Miller wants to do is so insane that it could, if he does it, cause a civil war. Now, let me explain here. We have to go back to a disturbing article in The Atlantic from February by Ronald Brownstein about Donald Trump's deportation plan, the architect of which is Stephen Miller. And in this article, there are 2 paragraphs that are very scary, and I will read them to you. Quote, how Trump and his advisors intend to staff such a program would make a prospective Trump deportation campaign even more volatile. Stephen Miller, Trump's top immigration advisor, has publicly declared that they would pursue such an enormous effort partly by creating a private red state army under the president's command. Miller says a re-elected Trump intends to requisition National Guard troops from sympathetic Republican-controlled states, and they then deploy them into Democratic-run states whose governors refuse to cooperate with their deportation drive. The article continues. Such deployment of red state forces into blue states over the objections of their mayors and governors would likely spark intense public protest and possibly even conflict with law enforcement agencies under local control. And that conflict itself could become the justification for further insertion of federal forces into blue jurisdictions, notes Joseph Nunn, counsel at the Brennan Center. Okay, let me give you the full list of problems with this idea, and there are many. Deploying National Guard from Republican states into Democratic states will pit state-level authorities against each other. And it's going to set up this red state troops versus blue state governors to enforce policies in blue states, even if the blue state governments say we are opposed to it. Now, at minimum, forget about any further analysis for now. At minimum, this would provoke massive public protests, especially in cities that are against these policies. And suddenly you will have the National Guard from, say, Pennsylvania doing crowd control on the streets of New York City. Now, that alone is a recipe for horrible, tragic disaster. Secondly, this would unquestionably overreach federal authority. To have one state's National Guard go do law enforcement in another state, completely outrageous. And on that note, the plan probably violates both the Constitution's protections against the misuse of federal power as well as state sovereignty. All sorts of legal problems here. Remember, they claim to defend the Constitution and support law and order, which is the opposite of this plan. They support that stuff except when they don't. The deployment of the National Guard usually requires a governor's consent. If you force red state National Guards into blue states, you're bypassing that authority. Not only will there be legal challenges, it could get much worse than that. And in addition, you have the Posse Comitatus Act, Comitatus, I don't know, which restricts the use of the military for domestic law enforcement. This is one of the problems with deploying law enforcement to the border with Mexico, as Trump has talked about, which is it seems to violate the Posse Comitatus Act. And when you use state troops in that way, you're arguably violating that. Now, this is where it gets even uglier. Causing this chaos might actually be the plan. In other words, they may be looking to use this plan to spark protests, which they then use to justify more federal intervention. It's probably what they want. They use it to justify even more crackdowns. This is very dangerous territory. I hope it doesn't happen. I am not one of these MAGAs praying for civil war. I hope it doesn't happen. But more than anything else I've seen come out of the policy ideas of the forthcoming administration, it's this which would get me to say that might cause a civil war. Did you know that countless commercial databases and people search sites are storing your personal information? Anyone, from an employer to a former partner, can use these platforms to get details about your online presence, your home address, phone number, email, license plate, family members, financial information, even political views. Europe has laws that offer some protection, but in the US, the data is widely accessible. Even the FBI will buy this information from companies to spy on people without a search warrant. Our sponsor, Incogni, provides a solution. It takes just seconds to sign up, and Incogni will send removal requests to all of the major data brokers, legally compelling them to get rid of your data. Incogni keeps you informed throughout the process. You'll get real-time updates, who has complied, which ones are still pending. They'll handle follow-ups, they'll handle appeals on your behalf, and this will save you hundreds of hours. Very few people have the time or resources to do this on their own. This service can also reduce the number of spam calls and emails you get, since many solicitors and scammers get your information from these very same sources. Go to incogni.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman for 60% off. The link is below.